Hello YouTube and welcome to another video. In this one I'm going to do a little bit of an update on the X2 project. I have made a little bit of progress even though it probably doesn't look like it because it's kind of more of the same. And I also got a few bits and pieces that I wanted to show you guys. I wanted to say two things. One is that I already shot all of this footage, but I was suffering from allergies so bad that I'm having to shoot it all over again because it was annoying for me to watch, so I didn't want to make you guys sit through it. The other thing is I wanted to thank Ryan for sending me the link to the CDK2 carburetor jets. In my last video, I asked you guys if there was a source where I could find them. And yeah, he sent me a link. I haven't ordered anything from them yet. The name of the company is Atlantic Jet Sports, I believe. And it looks like they have a few interesting things, so I'm going to go through their site and do an order. I guess we'll get into this video by showing you guys a few things that I picked up for the X2. Nothing very exciting, but I had mentioned in one of my last videos that I was waiting for some spiral wrap to do vacuum infusion. And I know that some of you know exactly what that is, but some of you don't really know what vacuum infusion is. If you don't do it, then you have no real reason to know what it is. So this is spiral wrap, and it is typically used to cover wires or tidy up wires. If you have a bunch of wires under your computer desk or whatever, you can get this stuff in 1/2 inch or 1 inch or whatever, and you wrap this around your wires and it holds them all together and keeps them tidy. It also protects them a little bit, but mainly this particular stuff is just to make it look tidy. So what they do in vacuum infusion or vacuum bagging is use this stuff to create an air channel or an air path, or to create a infusion path. Basically, I'm going to talk about it on the vacuum side, but you can do the exact same thing on where the epoxy actually comes into the system. This is the T fitting. You would hook your vacuum pump fitting up to here, and then if you just put this fitting inside of the bag, what would happen, or what could happen, is these ends could get plugged up fairly easily just from the bag or from the material. So what you can do with the spiral wrap is use it to create a larger air path or air channel, and you do that by wrapping it around the T like this. I should have probably done this off camera once and figured it out before I tried to do it for you guys. But you just wrap it around like that, and then you can make this piece kind of as long as you want. I'm sure that there's a limit to how effective it is, but you basically can cut this off at, you know, a couple of feet, and this creates an air channel that won't collapse on itself around your part. So you can put one of these and pull a vacuum for, you know, 1 foot or 2 feet across a part instead of pulling vacuum to one specific area. Hope that makes sense. I think I just confused myself even though I understand it. The other thing that I got, for those of you who follow my channel, you will know, where did I put that? For those of you who follow my channel, you will know that I've been using an airbrush that somebody gave me a long time ago to apply PVA mold release. That's polyvinyl alcohol, and it works very inconsistently. So I decided to stop using that and purchase myself one of these touch-up spray guns. And this was $27 on Amazon or something like that. I watched a few videos on how to spray on PVA, and it turns out that I made a few incorrect assumptions and I was doing it wrong. So hopefully doing it correctly and using a better gun to do it makes it turn out more consistently and go on a little bit easier. So what I had assumed was that you apply this stuff in the same way that you apply paint. And what I mean by that is anytime you're applying paint, whether you're using a brush or a spray applicator, you want to apply the paint to a wet edge. So when you're applying the coats, you do it in overlapping coats. So as you're spraying, this is going to come out in, say, a 6-inch pattern. So I spray it here and it covers 6 inches of coverage on the metal that I'm spraying it on. When you go down, you don't go down 6 inches. You only go down 3 inches. so you're overlapping 50%. You want to put on enough material and overlap enough so that the paint actually goes on wet. That allows it to flow out and get very smooth before it actually starts to flash off. With PVA, you're supposed to set the gun up so that it actually goes on quite dry. You don't want it going on so dry that it actually dries before it hits the surface, or that's going to be a problem, obviously. But with a PVA application, you don't want to have it actually flowing out. You don't want to apply it thick enough so that it's wet when it goes on and flows out. I don't really understand exactly why that is, but apparently it has something to do with the fact that it's quite thick, and when it comes out of the nozzle of the gun, if the particles are large enough to actually fully wet out the surface, the particles will collide with each other as they come out of the tip of the gun, and they will form blobs on the surface. And I did notice that it makes the surface look kind of milky. I did a couple of things with the airbrush to try to increase the flow because I thought I needed to wet it out like paint. And when I did that, it would make the surface kind of milky, and it had a tendency to want to run on me. So I'm going to try changing settings and using this and hope that it works out a lot better. We're now going to pick up where I left off at the end of the last video. I had applied some fairing compound to the hull, and we're going to check it out, see how it hardened up, and try to do some sanding. This is the first I'm seeing it. The stuff in the container has hardened, so that is good news. Feels relatively hard. And what I'm going to do now, I think, is try to take a thumbnail for my last video. Yeah, let's see. That should make it interesting. Thumbnail. I'm going to try to do some sanding on the hull and see how it turns out. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to put the heat gun inside of the hull to warm this stuff up a little bit and let it cure. But I'll run the sanding block over it a few times and see what happens here. This one. This one. Yeah, it's gonna need the heat gun. I don't recommend sanding epoxy when it's like this, but it actually is making it a little bit easier in my case because the epoxy actually rolls up into these little logs and it cleans off the sandpaper. So you don't have to spend any time cleaning the paper. But if you're too aggressive with it, you could potentially damage the epoxy to the point where you're doing more harm than good. So yeah, probably not the best idea. So it's currently 1 in the morning and I have done a bunch of prep work. I sanded and cleaned the hull all up, and then I mixed up the last of my poly epoxy. I started putting stuff down on the hull, and I had this area done fairly well, but I wanted to do some touch-ups, and I figured that it was starting to harden up, so I kind of slapped it on really quick to kind of spread it out. And then I heard a whole bunch of sirens and a whole bunch of commotion going on. So I go outside and yeah. My neighbor has had some electrical panel issues, and they had a fire last year, an electrical panel fire, and I guess they had another one. Apparently they had it repaired after the last time, but so yeah, I came back to this and I went and checked that out. I went into the house and I was checking to see if there was, you know, flames coming from it, if I had to, like, get my garden hose out and start watering the front of my house or something. And I came back here after I figured out it was okay. I actually talked to the neighbor and they said that it was the electrical panel. So I came back in here and tried to smooth some of this stuff out. And it actually had set up enough that it was peeling off when I tried to smooth it over. So I ended up having to take the heat gun and heat it up. And as you can see, that didn't work terribly well. I mean, I got it better than it was. I got the material on, but yeah, it didn't work terribly well. So I'm really hoping that this turns out. I'm hoping that I got enough bulk of material so that I can sand it down and it will work. I did order some more epoxy and it will be coming the first of next week, probably Monday or Tuesday. But if I want to do any more work this weekend, it's currently Thursday evening. Well, I guess Friday morning now. But yeah, I'm all out of hardener for the poly epoxy, so I would have to use the Squid Epoxy, which means one, I don't have very much of it. This is what I have left. And two, this stuff hardens really quick, so I'd have to do it in really small batches and to get it down really quickly. So I'm imagining that that's going to happen because I'm pretty sure it's not going to be perfect. I'm filming on my iPhone, by the way, that's why it's so shaky. I'm going to try to get a bunch of stuff done this weekend on the hull. I got to fill this hole and this and this, and there's a groove here. Couple little spots on the other side, I think, nothing serious, but I would like to get most of the bottom of the hull done this weekend. So yeah, I will have to use the Squid Epoxy for that. I'm not looking forward to it because I got used to the long pot life of this stuff. I've decided to try this out. I've got the heat gun turned on high inside of the hull, and it's gonna heat up this area quite well. It'll get it up over 100, probably 130 degrees. I've never used the heat gun on high before, so I'm gonna have to keep a really close eye on it. So I'm gonna go grab my infrared thermometer and keep monitoring the temperature, see what happens. This is my 5th or 6th attempt to shoot this clip for you guys to give you a bit of an update on the X2. I'm suffering from allergies quite badly today for some reason, and I'm having a really hard time not to make really annoying noises, so forgive me if I sound a little bit weird. I didn't shoot any footage of doing this, but I added some thickened epoxy to these areas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 little patches I did on the hull. And part of the reason why I didn't film it is because it was boring, but also I used the Squid Epoxy because it was the only thing I have left. Before I even had it mixed up, it was starting to get hot. So the temperature yesterday was 33 Celsius. I'm not sure what that was in Fahrenheit, but I started adding Cabasil to this, and there was what? I had 45 grams of material of epoxy mixed up, and before I could even get the Cabasil mixed in, it was starting to get hot. So I put it down as quick as I could and realized after the fact that I hadn't even smoothened this part out. So it was starting to harden up quite quickly, and I got it smoothened out, but not as good as I wanted. This damaged area wasn't very deep, so I was gonna try to fill it up and smooth it off, so I just had to sand it and I would be done. Because it had set up too much, I tried to smoothen it out, but I ended up making the hole a little deeper, so I'm gonna have to do a second application in that area. Moving from there back to here, I'm sure that this just looks like a huge mess on camera, but all of these black spots or black areas basically would have been low spots, and now they are tapered into where they need to be. So even though it looks like a total mess, I'm actually making a lot of progress with this area. I could add some more material to this and do a perfect job on it, but it's pretty close to good now, and it is the bottom of the ski, so I'm not terribly concerned about it. The only area that I think I'm going to do some more work on is the front, and the reason for that is I think this area isn't shaped quite the same as this area, and so in order to figure that out, it's really hard to see with everything all different like this. So I think what I might actually do is wait until I get the whole thing coated in black. Once I have these areas sorted out, I'm going to coat the whole bottom of the hull in black epoxy. I'm going to do that for two reasons. The main reason is because I'm going to be covering the bottom of the hull in a carbon fiber veneer. So one thin sheet of carbon fiber, and you're going to be able to see through the weave in some spots, and you would be able to see where the white was showing through. So it's standard procedure when you're doing a carbon veneer or a carbon skinning to coat the underneath layer in black so that it doesn't show up. The other reason why I'm going to do it is because it's going to make it very easy to see where high and low spots are. That's probably going to annoy me because I'm guaranteed that there's going to be spots here that I have to do more repairs on. The good news is that with the black epoxy that I'm putting on over this, if the area isn't too bad, I can actually just add some of that black epoxy, some more of that black epoxy, and I can actually use that to sand it out and get it nice and even and true. So I'm going to have to do some work around the front of the hull, and that is going to show up once I get it all coated in glossy black epoxy. But that's going to have to wait. I'm going to do that with the poly epoxy, which I am getting on Tuesday. And so that's not going to be in this video because I'm going to try to get this out on Sunday for you guys. You are now completely updated on the X2 project. It is currently Sunday afternoon around 4 p.m. and I'm shooting this one last clip so that I can get my video edited, uploaded, and you guys can actually see it. I'm quite excited about getting the bottom of the hull done because that's going to mean that I get to flip it over and start working on the other side. Ignoring the fact that I have to do a bunch of fiberglass work, that means that I'm going to be able to do some engine work or actually install the engine and figure out some stuff as far as layout goes. I'm going to have to figure out some stuff with the exhaust. I need to figure out where I'm going to put the bracing in, which means that I could possibly use the original fuel tank. The brace that went across the front was actually restricting the fuel tank from moving forward, and because I don't have a factory water box, it means that I have a lot of room up in the front. So I can quite possibly use the OEM fuel tank and just move that brace forward a little bit. I'm going to have to figure out some stuff with the exhaust as far as water lines and all that. I got a bunch of wiring stuff to do. I've got some of the steering components that need to be sandblasted. We still have to do the first fire up on the engine. I've got to do a small weld repair on the pump. I need an impeller. I've got to put that stuff in. So yeah, there's a ton of stuff to do, but that is going to have to wait for future videos. You are now up to date. That is going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.